So good equipment for tailoring. It's regarded as more difficult because it's so precise. Ultimately, it's not that difficult, but it is time consuming. You have to have, well, I mean, good equipment for sewing is always a plus. I mean, you'll get better product if you have good equipment. So she does talk about having a good cut surface. So I have a solid table here. My table in my sewing room is also a good quality. It's waist high. It's about 4 feet across and 6 feet long. So I have lots of space to lay out, which means I have lots of space to pattern match and do the fussy cutting. She talks about a well-padded ironing board. Well-padded ironing board, if you have ever ironed fabric with something that's over a board that's not well padded, then you might notice the metal back framework of your ironing board kind of imprints itself on the front side of your fabric. It goes away if you wash the fabric, but it's an easily avoidable problem because of course it goes away once you wash, but then you have to re-iron the fabric and then it's back again. If you just pad your ironing board really well, you won't have to worry about that. Shears that are very sharp. I use my Gingers. I love my Gingers. These are my scissors that are only for fabric. These are micro serrated. I use the micro serration because I cut silk. All right, I sew with a lot of silk fabric. That is my preferred fiber. And the micro serration makes sure that the silk doesn't slide off the blade while I'm trying to cut it. If you are into rotary cutting and it's something you can, that you're comfortable with, you can use rotary cutters on silk. I have been cutting out quite a bit of silk using rotary cutters for a project I'm working on. So you can use rotary cutters on silk fabric as well. Calls for a good machine. Now this one was pretty cautious that a machine was well regulated to stitch with an elastic medium long stitch proving best. That being because a lot of fabrics back then, a lot of fabrics used in tailoring are very thick. So if you have a short stitch, the stitches are going to break, versus you want a longer stitch on a thicker fabric. Most machines these days will have auto sensors in them. Not all of them. You know, some do, some don't. Mine does, so I don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. But just sew test stitches basically. Take some scraps after you finish cutting out and sew some test stitches. Make sure that it's going to work for you. She calls about having a brush, which is like a lint brush basically. Back then she said use a tailor's brush. It's basically something to help raise the nap or pile on fabrics like velvet, wool, something that's going to pull up and look better with a fuller filament, fuller fabric. And let's see here what else she called about. Oh yeah, well, that's in case so you can lift the nap on fabrics when by accident you press too flat with a hot iron. It can happen. I've done it. Number 7 or 8 sewing needles are perfectly suitable for tailoring. Again, that's for hand sewing. Most machines will have their own needle sizing to work with. And then silk thread, she says, should always be used. It presses better, breaks less often than cotton thread. To me, thread is very much a matter of personal choice. Again, it depends on what you're making as to whether or not you want to use silk thread. And so those are that's her list of equipment. That's kind of a rough list. We'll go into more of that as I work my way through the book.